We have an unexpectedly optimistic injury update that could lead to a golden opportunity for another player, and the Canucks may have found the solution to their LTIR problem. We're going to be breaking down all of that in this episode of Canucks Digest, but first make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you don't miss any updates surrounding the Canucks as we head into our final preseason game and into the regular season. And with that, let's hop into the first topic of the day, which is Pius Suter injury implications. So Tocchet, when speaking to the press today, said that Pius Suter is day-to-day, upper body, that's pretty well it. And this was very nice to hear, considering that when the injury happened in that Edmonton preseason game a few nights ago, it did seem like it was pretty significant, and it did seem like he was going to be evaluated for something more serious than it ended up being. But this is something that's very nice to see, that the Canucks won't have to worry about putting him on IR. We know there's going to be a lot of things as far as the Canucks are concerned, as far as recent injuries that we broke down in one of our last videos. And as far as later on in this video, we're going to break down more LTIR solutions. But this is also something that Canucks can kind of breathe about, where we're going to avoid having to put him on IR. I know this wasn't a thing that Canucks fans were too worried about, but where these few injuries have popped up recently, Thatcher Demko, Dakota Joshua, now Pius Suter, and of course Tucker Pullman on LTIR. There's things that the Canucks did want to avoid heading into this season. And when looking at Pius Suter's stats from last season as well, he was a pretty productive and efficient third, fourth line center, putting up 29 points, 105 shots on net with getting those points. Plus 17 plus minus rating. That was awesome. Not many giveaways. You'd love to see that. A decent time on ice average as well, 15.5 minutes. So this guy was very effective and was a great locker room presence and a great guy for the team as far as depth goes. He was the guy who punched our ticket into the second round against the Edmonton Oilers. So he was one of the guys who helped us in the postseason, especially when there was guys who didn't show up in the postseason and were those passengers, like Rick Tocchet mentioned last season in that famous interview that every Canucks fan was just running with and quoting for the rest of the postseason, and still eventually to this day, like we just did. So the Canucks do have a few things that they have to work out this season, but seeing that Suter isn't going to be a significant injury is very nice. However, that has led to opportunities for other guys. We see here in the Wednesday practice lines that you have guys like Aatu Räty on that line, as well as Teddy Blueger moving to the fourth line. He's on there with Nils Höglander and Connor Garland. That's going to be a very speedy line. Aatu Räty has been a player that's very much impressed, as well as Daniel Sprong. And when jumping into Sprong in particular, you see there one of the standouts from the preseason was him after a strong showing during training camp where he flashes offensive talent and versatile skill set. It's no surprise to see him skating on the second line with Petey and Jake DeBrusk. Sprong has shown great chemistry with Petey, and his ability to finish his plays in natural fit in the top six. His rise has been one of the more exciting developments. Absolutely. And especially when looking at who he's going to be playing with Jake DeBrusk and Elias Pettersson. This is a solid line where this could be what we run with heading into opening night. We know that there's going to be some guys who might not be ready. Suter might be able to be plugged into that lineup. It would be interesting to see what that brings as far as Blueger or Räty, who gets the start and who gets the sit. But it's going to be nice to see where we got guys that are going to have opportunities, not only in this preseason game, but potentially opening night. And Räty in particular is one that's very appealing, where we see here that on the third line, Räty has turned heads during camp. He's had a very impressive preseason. He's very much impressed Rick Tocchet and everyone else. It'll be interesting to see how things shake out once Joshua and Suter return, as far as how he's going to fit, because he does play on the wing as well as center, as the Canucks will have some very difficult decisions to make. Many believe that when Joshua returns, he'll slide back into his regular spot on the third line along with Connor Garland. That's no surprise. Those guys are the Batman and Robin. That leaves Räty and Suter and Blueger battling for the coveted third line center position. And when speaking on Räty as that third center, Tocchet did say, yeah, I thought rats between them in the preseason. They've had some good games together. They had another good practice. I think Gars does a good job of kind of making that line go, and they were good today. So we'll see how they play on Friday, and that's going to be an awesome game to see heading into our final preseason game against the Edmonton Oilers before we jump into the regular season. So that's going to be a nice game to just see how these guys play, see how Räty does. We know Connor Garland and Dakota Joshua are the dream team, so if he's able to develop this chemistry with Räty, maybe we do see him fit into that third line where it's going to be Räty, Joshua, and Connor Garland, where this could be a trio that is very, very scary, especially when Ratu has all this momentum heading under him. He has the confidence of Tocchet, the confidence of Patrik Allvin, and the confidence within himself that he's been working through all off season to make sure that he is ready to be plugged into the NHL lineup and make this Vancouver Canucks roster. It's going to be interesting to see, but what do you guys think as far as Aatu Ratu, and will he play opening night? We'd love to hear what you guys have to say, but that's going to lead us into the second topic of the day, which is LTIR problem solved. So we see here that in order to become cap compliant, the Vegas Knights may look to trade for an injured player that they can place on LTIR for the regular season to get them over $88 million. We saw the other day that they did get bailed out by Gary Bettman in the NHL. They got some special accommodations that the Canucks just simply would not have gotten. However, this does beg the question, could the Canucks trade Tucker Poolman, who isn't expected to play this coming season, and could this maybe help their situation where this does free up that $2.5 million that the Canucks are so desperate to get rid of? Poolman is entering the final year of that 4-year contract where he's earning $2.5 a year, and the Canucks could trade Poolman to the Golden Knights in exchange for a draft pick in 2025, potentially a 3rd or 4th rounder. That would definitely be a lot nicer than what they got initially for Tucker Poolman. He's spent more time on the LTIR than anything recently, and it's just one of these things where just take the loss, try and get what you can for him. And the Canucks did want to go into this year not being on the LTIR, so if they can find a way to not have to do that and just trade him to the Golden Knights, get a draft pick for him, and make sure that you ensure something for the future rather than banking on him to eventually be healthy at some point and just activate him from that list so that he's not taking on dead cap. But at the same time, if he does come back, will he warrant that $2.5 million average year or average salary? That's a very big question mark, and that's something that the Canucks maybe don't want to risk having to do. So if they can deal him for a draft pick that will be healthy and something that they can develop while they have a big draft prospect pool that is developing in the OHL, in the minors, in the AHL, in the Abbotsford system. There's so many different avenues that the Canucks could go rather than just be tied down to Tucker Poolman, who's been more of a bust than a gem, really. And it seems that this would be a nice fit for the Canucks to just ship him out, not have to worry about LTIR at all as far as the immediate future. We do have the Thatcher Demko situation, but maybe that does open it up where they can put Thatcher Demko on LTIR, and now they have a lot of cap space where before the trade deadline happens, we could be seeing a lot more moves coming from this Vancouver Canucks team. But what do you guys think about the LTIR possible solution? Would love to hear what you guys have to say. Do you trade Tucker Poolman? Do you risk it and get the draft picks, or do you just keep him and hope that maybe he's going to come back 100% healthy at some point next year or the year after? We know the Canucks can't keep taking on this much dead cap, but what do you guys think down below? But that's going to take us into everyone's favorite topic, which is comment of the day. And we see here from OG785 that losing Patera helps, in my opinion. It frees up some money, one more contract slot with 5 goalies under the contract. He was redundant. Aside from the 5 goalies under contract, Abby also has Lemieux, so they are set in this department. This is talking about our last video where we talked about the waiver clearing, where Philip DiGiuseppe did clear waivers. He's coming back to the Vancouver system, starting in Abbotsford, but he's probably going to move up to the NHL in a little bit longer. And then we have Jiri Patera, who was claimed by the Boston Bruins. And I definitely agree with this take. In our last video, we did mention how Patera was kind of just one of those guys where you could afford to lose him. It was an overcrowded stable of goaltenders. We didn't need that many, especially when Kevin Lankinen was brought in. This way, we brought in Patera before we went out and got Lankinen. So now that we have a more reliable backup in him, and then we have some younger guys like Ty Young, like Talopilo, that they can just play in Abbotsford and just be plugged into some of the NHL games here and there. That's a lot better than taking on a chance like Jiri Patera where he could be slotted into a position that he wasn't necessarily ready for. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this Canucks team as we head through the season. There's going to be so much things to see, and the season hasn't even started yet. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a crazy first week. Can't wait to bring you guys all that amazing content as the regular season gets underway. But before we get to that, we do have our last preseason game against the Edmonton Oilers, so stay tuned for our post-game reaction to that or whatever storylines develop from that. But that's going to do it for this episode of Canucks Digest. I've been your host, Griffin. Take care.